Hi, this is Kathy Davis, Davis Creative Publishing, and I'm here today to welcome you. Our guest today is Holly Fisher. Before we welcome her officially, I want to remind everyone of a few logistic details. The call is being recorded, and you'll receive a link to the YouTube video a few days after the call. Your attendance at these meetings serves as a permission to be seen in the recordings. Please mute yourself on your end so as to avoid any background noise. Find your chat button on your screen and please type in all of your questions into the chat. I'll be watching that, Holly, so that we can make sure we get all the questions answered. And we promise to end the call around noon or shortly thereafter so you can get back to business. And again, if you've not already muted yourself, please do so. Our theme for 2024 is growing your business by the book. I'm going to quickly just pause a second and make sure that I have asked Julie to be my co-host. There we go. That way she can monitor all our guests. And our theme for 2024 is growing your business by the book. Each month, we welcome guests who inspire authors by sharing their knowledge, new ideas, opportunities, and wisdom. Help me welcome Holly Fisher. Holly is the owner of Fisher Creative Marketing and a StoryBrand Certified Guide. She's helped dozens of organizations clarify their marketing message and develop an effective sales funnel to generate more leads and boost their bottom line. A longtime professional writer and former full-time journalist, Holly believes in the power of story to inform and engage. Holly lives in Asheville, North Carolina, and with her husband and teenage daughter. Thank you, Holly, for being here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
You'll fit right in. We have quite a few writers here.
It's good. My people.
Yes, exactly. So tell me a little bit about how our writing can affect our marketing and what do we do? Where do we start?
Yeah. So one of the things that I love to help people with is just thinking about how they can, if you have a business, you have a book that you've written, obviously you want to sell more copies of that. So one of the big things that I encourage people to do is think about email to use to really sell their products or services. And so how can you tap into the power of email marketing, which is still a really effective marketing tool. It doesn't cost a lot, right? And the return is really great. So thinking about how can you build your email list? How can you stay in touch with people on a really regular basis and stay top of mind can be a really great way to kind of market your book.
So where do I start? I know there's a lot of different email programs out there like Constant Contact and MailChimp, and I'm sure a few others.
Yeah.
How do I know which one is the best one for me?
Yeah, that's a great question. People often ask that. I personally use MailChimp. That's largely just because I started using it many years ago, and that's
Mhm.
just sort of what I'm most comfortable with. They all, like any program, right? They're all going to have things we love and things we don't love, right? I have yet to stumble upon like the software solution that has like every single thing that I want, right? So I usually recommend to folks just picking something and just getting started with it. So pick something, like if you want to start with MailChimp or you want to start with Constant Contact or any of those, most of them do have a free option. So you can kind of get in there, start playing around and get a feel for it. And then really just start using it and getting going. You can always switch later, if you don't love it. But most of them, like I said, do have a free option. So I usually encourage folks to just get in there and get started. And honestly, it kind of comes down to like your personal preference,
Yeah.
I think, just what
And
you
a
kind
lot
of
of
are
them are very
comfortable with.
similar. Yeah. So
Yes.
what is my biggest takeaway for using an email? I mean, what does it do for me? What's in it for me?
Yeah, the best thing that I love about email is because it allows me to stay connected with people who are interested in what I have to sell or what I have to say, right? So people that are on your email list have come into your ecosystem in some way, right? They've already made a purchase from you. Maybe they've downloaded some sort of freebie that you have on your website, or they signed up, via social media, whatever it is, they were already interested in you,
Mhm.
right? So they're a really good warm lead, right? So those are great people to tap for, to buy a book, buy another book, buy other things that you have, because those people are already in your ecosystem. They're already interested in what you have to say. And so this really allows you to keep in touch with them. I send out an email, a really short email once a week to people on my list. Usually has just a quick marketing tip or maybe a link to a blog post or a video or something like that that I've done, and just really allows me to stay top of mind and stay in touch with people. And honestly, I've had some folks that have been on my list for 2 and 3 years before they've hired me for something.
Yeah.
So it's just a really great way to nurture those folks, stay in front of them. So when they're ready to make a purchase or ready to engage with you in some way, you're still landing in their inbox. You're still top of mind.
So that kind of takes me back a step to where I have two questions in one. How part of this is, how do I repurpose the content that I already have? And
Yes.
two is, how do I get other people's emails?
Yeah.
I have business cards perhaps from networking, or someone will email me, but there's some legalities about adding people's. Can you talk a
Yes.
little bit about how do I get those emails to begin with? How do I start my list?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question that people often have. It's like, okay, great. How do I get people on my list? And what are how can you just add anybody to your list, right? So a couple of things are, I mean, you do need permission to add people to your list. If you meet somebody at a networking event, you can always ask them, hey, can I add you to my list, or follow up with them later? Is it okay to put you on my email list? I find, 99% of the time people are like, yes, add me to your list. If definitely I encourage people to not buy lists, right? There are services out there where you can buy lists. I don't think that's going to be a very effective use of your money. And because I mean, none of us really want to, we've all landed on those lists, right? Like, how did I get on this list?
Mhm.
Right? Have you ever bought anything from those? Probably not. You probably unsubscribed, right? So definitely making sure that you have permission. You don't want someone to flag your email as spam, right? Too many of those could trigger an issue in, MailChimp or whatever platform that you happen to be using. So definitely making sure that you're getting permission from people. I like to, if I'm doing some kind of an event or maybe hosting a workshop or something like that, and people have to sign up, you can have a button on there, a disclaimer letting them know that they're going to be added to your
Mhm.
list. Certainly people can obviously unsubscribe from those lists anytime they want. So making sure that you have that permission is really key, because you don't want to run the risk of annoying someone or getting into any issues where you've added, especially if you've added a lot of people to a list and you don't have their permission. So does that answer that
Yeah,
question?
and I know
Yeah.
sometimes as I'm looking around our crowd today, I noticed we have a chef here. So one of the ways that perhaps she could start adding names to an email list is to offer a free download on her website of
Yes.
maybe some holiday recipes coming up.
Mhm.
And that gets them on your
Absolutely.
email. You can set it up so it goes straight into your MailChimp or Constant Contact and
Correct.
starts collecting them. And that way you have their permission.
Yes, absolutely. So having some freebie on your website or something that you offer that folks are signing up for, we've all done that, right? We've all put in our email address and gotten something, right? Recipes, a free download, a report, like whatever. We've all done that. So having something like that on your website is a great way to build your email list. Also hosting events or workshops or webinars, in person, virtual events, anything like that, where you can collect people's contact information. Again, making sure that you've let them know you're going to put them on the list. But all of those are great ways to build your email.
And so that kind of leads us into, repurposing the content in our book. What are some ways that you've seen work well to make that happen.
Yeah, and I think if you have a book, you're already like way ahead of a lot of other people because you're sitting on a gold mine of content, right? So when I'm talking with folks about content marketing, I usually recommend that they start with some sort of what I like to call anchor content. So, like a bigger piece, right? For a lot of folks, that's maybe a blog post or a video they've created. Maybe they have a podcast. In your case, a book is a really great piece of anchor content. So, how can we now sort of slice and dice this content that we have and use it on social media, use it in emails, maybe turn it into little video clips? You're sitting on all this content that you've already created. So now how can you chop it up and use little snippets of it in a bunch of different ways? Or maybe there's even something, a little small piece of that that you can use as a free download on
Mhm.
your website, right? Whether that's a sample chapter or maybe a worksheet that goes along with your book, recipes that go along with your book, right? Whatever that might be, you could have that on your website. So the hardest part sometimes is creating the content. So if you already have a lot, then just simply maximizing that, reusing it, repurposing it is
Mm.
great for social media. It's great for your emails. A lot of people are hesitant to do consistent email marketing because they're not sure what to put in it. Here you go. You can pull little snippets from your book and use that in your emails for sure.
So now I know we have a variety of authors today, in from children's books to anthology sponsors to historical
Okay.
um, cooking, as I mentioned earlier. And what are some ways that we can use that content without giving away the whole book?
Mhm. Yeah. I love just pulling out like just a little piece, right? So like maybe you have um just one little story. Let's say there's a little example story in your book, right? So could you pull that out and share that in an email, for example?
Mhm.
And then you can also use that to sort of drive people to make a purchase, right? So if they really enjoyed that, they can read the whole book. Or if they liked these three recipes, well, you can go get the whole cookbook, for example, right?
Mhm.
So pulling out just little snippets, you don't necessarily have to give away like a huge chunk of the content. Maybe there's just some small little takeaways or, let's say you've got some various kinds of tips in your book. Let's say there's five of them. Well, one of those, could be an email or a social media post, or one of them could possibly turn into 10 social media posts, right? Depending on how meaty it is. So definitely just pulling out those little nuggets, right? And not necessarily feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm just giving people the whole thing, is a great way to kind of break up the book and also pique people's interest, right? So then hopefully they'll go and buy the whole thing, right?
Yeah. Well, and I've noticed also sometimes we'll work with authors and pull their blogs and reorganize them and create a start with a booklet about that.
Yeah.
And then they go back and they take each of those chapters and rewrite a new blog based on that and maybe updated information. And I know
Yes.
one of our authors here today has, Richard, how many tips are in your book? 10, 12?
9.
9, okay. Um, so you'll get a variety of numbers. And,
Mhm.
I can see, Richard, where this would work really well for you in order to increase, because you have your newsletter already established, but to grow that newsletter, we talk a little bit about that, where you have a newsletter existing and now you want to grow it. And actually, I do believe Richard works with a story brand consultant to
Oh,
write
fantastic.
his
Yes.
fun newsletters. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And also, even thinking about ways that you could use some of the content you have in the book in a different format, right? So, could you take one of the tips that you have in your book, for example, and then maybe create a short video of that, right? So, you're using some of the same content, but now you're putting it in a different format for use on, Instagram or YouTube or, whatever platform, that you happen to use. Now people can consume that in a video, which we all know people love video. So maybe you can use it in that way, or maybe you're thinking about doing a podcast or something like that, right? So again, you can use all these things to kind of drive people back to the book itself.
Mm-hmm. And Kim, I was just thinking about your illustrations are so lovely in your book that, that really pulls the eye. And you do such a great job. Kim does such a great job of writing her social media anyway. You're such a beautiful storyteller. And to tell stories about your farm animals and the life that they live, it takes us into another realm of
Oh,
fun.
that sounds great.
Yeah. And how you can use those illustrations as a way to pull people into your social media or into your newsletter that goes out. And Willie's got a great question. What if I write about someone that's no longer with us? We've been getting this question a lot lately. We have editors that are always watching to make sure that no one's going to get in trouble with what we write. And this question has come up actually twice in the last 24 hours. If you're writing about someone that is no longer with us, keep your story to in words that say, I felt, I see, I saw, I remember, because then it becomes your story. And if it's a relative or if it's a colleague, and as long as you're sharing something positive, I don't have a problem with that. Holly, I don't know if you have a different opinion of that, but
No, I think that's a great, yeah, I think
that's
that's a great
typically how
perspective.
we make the dividing line.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Because then it's your story and your perspective. They're not here to refute it. So yeah, keeping it about you is good.
And positive stories are always better. We don't want to, badmouth. It's when you start going down that path of talking negatively about someone that you run the risk of being served a summons or something like that. And you don't want that to happen. So it's as long as you're staying positive I think you're fine. Now we have had incidences where if you are writing it in a book and actually it was Pam that asked me this. So it may have been Pam is one of our writing coaches that Willie knows. And so this may be the question she was asking me is that if this person's family is still alive and you're telling a story that might affect them, then out of courtesy, and you know how to reach the family, I would contact that family. Otherwise, I would make sure that you change the identity enough in your story that no one really knows who this person is, or that family member cannot recognize it. And I'd be happy to talk with you, Willie, offline to get into more detail about it and help you with that. Excuse me. So what are some ways that now that we have a newsletter and we want to get it out, how do we let people know that we have this newsletter?
Yeah. Yes, yes. One of the things that I try to encourage people to do is grow their email list, not necessarily just asking people to sign up for your newsletter. Because how many of us get like a bazillion emails, right? We all do, right? So sometimes we're a little hesitant to be like, let me put my name on one more newsletter list, right? I already get, 100 of those a day, it feels like. So that's where if you can think about what's the freebie that you can give away, what's the thing that is really going to motivate someone to sign up for your email list. So just asking me to add myself to your newsletter list. It's fine to have that maybe kind of in the footer of your website, right? So if people are just like super fans and they want to get on your list, they can. But what is something else that you can offer them of value? Again, is that some free download? Is that a video series? Is that an event that you're doing? Like, what is something else that's really going to make people go, yes, I want that, and I'm
Or
willing to give you my
top
email
three
address.
tips for whatever. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And I know the scenario that we try and remind our authors about when it comes to their brand is you want to find a solution to what your audience wakes up in the middle of the night worried about.
Yeah. 100%. Mm-hmm.
And if you can offer that solution, whether it's summarized in 3 short tips that then takes them to your website that then expands further upon that, is giving them information. People are looking for resources, they're looking for hope and solutions, and they're looking for a way to grow their business and grow their exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of authors that build their business around their book, and there are ways to set yourself apart from
Yeah,
the
if you
next
can
person.
solve a little bit of a problem for folks with that freebie that you have, right? I mean, you mentioned like the recipe, the cookbook a minute ago. So if I'm like trying to figure out what I want to make for Christmas dinner or something, right? And you're offering me like a menu and a grocery list and all the recipes as a freebie, I'm like, that's fantastic. Yes, give me that thing,
I
right?
love that. Yeah.
Versus just sign up for my recipe newsletter, right?
I love that idea of offering a recipe and the grocery list at the same time,
Yeah,
because that's
I'm a big fan of
sometimes,
those.
yeah. Because then you know exactly what you're going for. I'm lucky enough I have a husband that likes to do the grocery shopping, but I ran into a grocery store this week just for a couple things, and it was like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how long I had been gone. It was like, get me out of here. How fast can I get out? Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a bit overwhelming. Uh,
hmm
it's
Yeah, so
changed a
the
bit.
easier you can make things for people, solve a little problem like that, like I'm going ahead and giving you the grocery list
Hmm.
or whatever it is, that's a really great piece of value, right? A really valuable piece of content, and that's going to be much more enticing to me than, just put your email on my list, right?
It's all about saving them time and making their
Absolutely.
lives easier, whoever your
Totally.
audience is. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
And like for the children's books that are on the call now, for me, it's about I have 2 grandsons coming over for a sleepover a week from tomorrow night. And what is it that I can do to help keep them busy? And what's something interesting that I could do with them or share with them that would
Yes.
be something new? And
hmm
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's why people love things like, we're kind of coming into a holiday season, so people love things like gift guides and resource because we kind of want somebody else to do the work for us, right? Kind of
Mhm.
curate these lists and then we can go, great, I didn't have to spend 4 hours researching this. I can just read your list of suggestions, right? So again, it's saving people time and it's really positioning you as a really valuable expert in your space.
So let's talk a little bit about the concept of story and how sharing a story is a way to capture the attention of your audience. And what is it about a story that entices us?
Yeah. So there's a stat that we share a lot in our StoryBrand community that it's about 30% of our time we spend daydreaming, right? Just kind of thinking about other things, right? Thinking about just other stuff and just daydreaming. And the one time that we don't do that is when we're really engaged in a powerful story. So, if you think about a really great book that you've read, a movie that you watch, or a TV show that you really love, you're focused on that, right? You're not sitting there thinking, oh gosh, what do I got to do at work tomorrow? I gotta do this, right? You're really focused on the story. So definitely story has so much power in keeping people engaged and really drawing them in and keeping them and getting them connected with you.
I know both my husband and I have had this cold bronchial, whatever it is, going around, and I wanted my great grandmother's potato soup. I have the recipe for it. Charlene, you may get a kick out of this. And it's been a couple years since I made it. That's what I went after the ingredients for the other day. And so my husband's making it last night. And so we have a 3-ring binder where we keep like all our family recipes. And he pulls it out and he brings it in. He goes, just exactly what is a pinch? How much is a pinch? Because he's very technical in that he wants to
Yeah.
know exactly how much that's supposed to be. And I started looking through the recipe again, and it's all written that way. It's, just, enough potatoes to fill the bottom of your pan. Well, and so he said, well, how big of a pan do I use? So
Ah,
start with a big pan, get a
that's
big one.
funny.
You'll be fine.
That's so good. Yeah, pinches, splashes, these are not
Yeah.
real precise measurements, right?
Yeah. Or season to taste. That was another
Yeah,
one. Just like
that's
it was
a
not going to
dash,
compute with
right?
him. Yeah. It was pretty funny.
That's great. I love that.
But yeah, those are the stories that people love to hear. It's all
Mm,
part of that creating community.
mhm.
And I think as you're growing your community through emails and communicating with them, that's what strengthens your community. They get to know, like, and trust you.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. And same thing if you're doing a lot of social media, right? People really like to get that sense of who you are and a little bit of that behind the scenes and some of the story of your work and even your personal life to some degree that you're comfortable sharing. Some of those things can be really powerful too. And
mhm.
just again, like you said, getting people to know, like, and trust you.
Well, and Richard, you've got done a great thing with you and Rocky. Rocky, your little dog. I'm sure everybody asks you about Rocky. I mean, anybody that's a dog person is going to ask. Can you tell us how Rocky feels about that, Richard?
Well, he doesn't like me to dress him up, let me tell you that, but I do dress him up. I've done Thanksgiving, I've done Halloween pictures and Christmas pictures with him and yes, he's a good guy. He's what 6, 7 years old now, but
Wow.
I have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, and I know I'm always asking about Rocky, but I'm a big dog person, so
That's awesome.
there he is.
Oh gosh, cute.
Yeah, yeah,
That's awesome. I love it.
terrific.
Yeah, I definitely notice when I share something on social media, like I'll create something that's like some really great marketing tips, some really good information, and it'll be fine. And then I share something that's like more personal or fun, or um, that's the stuff then that always kind of takes off, right? So it just reinforces that concept of people want to get to know you. People want to hear your stories. And that's how we really get connected to folks.
So I know, as a publisher, I hear a lot of times, so what do I have to say that anybody wants to hear?
Mhm.
Or I live a normal life. I don't have any stories. How do you help people find that story? What can I say?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, we probably all feel like that sometimes, right? I mean, most of the time I'm working with businesses. Lots of times I'm working with businesses to kind of help share their story. And everybody has some sort of story within them, a story about their business. And a lot of it is also thinking about how we can bring others into that story. So when I'm working with businesses in particular, a lot of it is thinking about how can we draw our customers into the story? How can we make the story about them? And so even if you're thinking about, from a book standpoint, you probably have a story that could help someone else, right? Or something that you have experienced that maybe it doesn't seem really monumental to you, but there's probably someone or many someones out there who could really benefit from hearing that
Mhm.
story. And so sometimes it's looking at it through the lens of how can I share my story to help other people? How can I invite people to be part of this story that I
Mhm.
have?
And what is my community looking for? Again, going back to that question of, how can I serve that community better?
That's
And
right.
how can I make their day better, make their day brighter? And I love that. I want to remind everybody, if you do have any questions or comments, please drop them in the chat and we'll make sure we get to them. Um, Charlene just mentioned to me that they actually have a spoon on Amazon, a measuring spoon for a pinch.
That's awesome. I
And
love
so
that. That's
I think I
cute.
know what his stocking stuffer is going to include this year.
That's great.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so when we're doing newsletters and social media and maybe a blog, and we've got our website, Is there a fine line of when too much is too much? Like how often do we put our message out there? How often do we
Yeah.
put our words, our stories out there?
I usually find most of the time people are not sharing too much. Most of the time people have the opposite problem, right? They're kind of
Mhm.
struggling to like keep things updated.
Mhm.
So as a general rule of thumb, I recommend doing, let's say if you want to do a blog post, if you commit to once a month, all right, that's good. And you can always do more of these things, but for most people committing to like once a month of a blog, I recommend at least a couple of times a month for your email. If you can do weekly is okay. Um, but most people a couple times a month is doable. And then in terms of social media, it's going to vary, depending on the platform that you're using. But if you're posting 3 or 4 times a week on something like that, that's Instagram or Facebook, that's fine. Most of the time, you don't need to be doing every single day. I mean, again, you certainly can on certain platforms for sure, but you don't have to. And usually I'm finding that people are kind of going, okay, what can I really commit to realistically? Daily is usually not something that most people can commit to realistically. So, if you're thinking about 3 or 4 times a week, and also thinking in terms of social media, what platforms you really want to focus on, right? So not necessarily feeling like you need to be everywhere every day.
And then one of the questions I get a lot, and I see a variety of how long an email should be. Um, Talk a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, that's a great question. I really encourage people to keep it short. If you put, 1 or 2 items in your email, and each of those are maybe a couple of paragraphs, or one is a video with a little
Mhm.
blurb that then links people off to the video, I think that's great. How many of you get sometimes emails from folks and they might have 8 to 10 items, right?
Yeah.
Like big long newsletters, and I'm like, I would love to read this because I'm interested in this particular organization or business.
Mhm.
And I'll be like, yeah, I don't have time. I'll get to that later.
Mhm.
Any thoughts on whether I ever get to that later? Right?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Very rarely do I have the opportunity, right? A bunch of other
Mhm.
emails come in. Eventually it probably gets deleted and I never read it. So I think just sending people something short, quick, valuable, right? So that you're just landing in their inbox with something that's really helpful, something that's a valuable tip, a tool, a resource, a little story that you're sharing that they can consume pretty quickly is great, right? Because again, the whole idea is for you to also just kind of stay top of mind, right? And so you're landing in folks' inbox and sharing something really helpful and you're staying top of mind. So I say less is less is more when it comes to
Yeah.
email marketing. Yeah,
So
because we all
rather
get a lot of
than,
emails.
yeah, and rather than, 10 different links, maybe do one that takes them to
Yes.
your website so that
Mhm.
it's more focused. It's a focused type of message rather than here's everything you ever want to know about me.
Totally. And sometimes people say, well, I'll just send one once a quarter, and then they want to pack it full of a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, actually, I'd rather you send that a couple times a month and send me one thing than send me a quarterly email with 15 different things that I'm never going to have time to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a really good question here from another baker.
Mm.
Dorothy, I switched my career from corporate finance. I'm a happy baker and author now. How can I use my book to build community at the same time that I'm building my bakery brand to avoid confusion in social media?
So the bakery and the book, are they all the same? Is the book
Dorothy,
also?
if you'd like to unmute.
Mm, Sure. Yes. Well, in the book, I mentioned my bakery because I took that path in order to find what I wanted, in order to find my work and life balance. So everything is together, but I have the book, I have my bakery. So how can I uh, send messages through social media, avoiding that they are going to be confused. So you wrote a book, so it's a bakery. Everything is together for me, but I don't want that they start thinking, okay, you are an author or a baker or this or that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Dorothy, are you referring to Coyotitas?
Yes.
Yes. So Dorothy has a chapter in a book called Coyotitas Rising. And in your chapter, do you mention your bakery?
Yes, I do.
So I think there's a great opportunity there to combine the two. Holly, how about you?
And the bakery is a like physical brick and mortar like bakery I can come to, or is it?
Well, it's an artisan bakery. 90% of my sales go through the website. It's a kind of e-commerce business. However, 2 months ago, I opened a partnership with a brick and mortar here so they can find my products over there.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so maybe it's more, I guess some of it is kind of thinking like, do you want to have more of a business brand, right? That's the bakery, or maybe you want to have more of a personal brand where you're able to talk about a little bit more of all the things that you're doing. And so that is the trick. Sometimes we don't want to talk about too many different things because, like you said, that people are going to be like, wait, what do you do? Right. So, sort of figuring out, like, do I really want my focus to be on this bakery and that piece of the story? And if that's, if that's your real, like, focus of your business and your life, that might be the direction then that you want to go.
And you could always say, and oh, by the way, if you'd like to hear more about my story, here's my book. And
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Or you could also you could have two different things. I mean, you could have like more of a business, like social media account that's really just focused on the bakery and the online sales and all that. And then just kind of have your personal one where you can be a little more, talk about a variety of different things.
Because that is what I have right now, my business account and my personal one. However, when I am in an event, so people sometimes, oh, but you are the same one that the book. So what do you do? I say like,
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
Well, and the book is a great way to because there's been a lot of promotion around the book. And the book is a great way to draw attention to your bakery business. And that was the purpose of the book, is to help you get that exposure and be out there.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
some of it depends on whether people want to be like the face, whether you want to be the face of your business or you want it to just be more of like a business, right? Some people are like, I don't want my face all over it. So there's some things that you kind of have to consider, just that are not necessarily right or wrong, but just sort of personal preference to some degree.
See, Dorothy, if you could put your website into the chat, that would be great.
Yeah, please do.
Sure, I will. Thank
I'll
you.
end a bakery. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. If anybody else would like to add your website in there, the chat, that would be great also. Richard had to drop off for another call. But I love this conversation. I know, Holly, you mentioned that you had a freebie offer that you were going to offer people that we'll send a link out to. Speaking of how to get their email going. Yeah,
that's right. Yep, you can go to my website. There is a free marketing assessment that you can take there, and I'm happy to stick it in the chat too if that's helpful. That you can just go. It's right as soon as you land on the website, you'll be prompted to fill that out, and it's just a good way to kind of look at some different aspects of your marketing and ask some questions about websites and emails and messaging and if you have a social media plan and all that. So it's just a good way to start thinking about, gosh, do I have these things in place?
Yeah.
Do I need to work on this a little bit? So I'll stick my website link in the chat.
And we'll make sure that we also share that when we send out the link to today's recording. So if there's any last minute words of wisdom for the group today, because we've talked about a lot of great stuff today, and I'm inspired to get going and do something, I'll tell you. What would your words of wisdom be?
Yeah, I think that would be to really keep your core message front and center, right? Keep your message simple, keep it clear, keep it focused on, again, kind of how you're solving problems for people, how you're helping people, and don't be afraid to repeat that. That's one thing that I remind people of a lot is they start to go, well, gosh, I've said this in an email, I've said it in social media, I said it here, I've got a book, blah, blah. And I'm like, we have to remember that we're consuming all of our own content, but most people are not consuming all of our content, right? They're not necessarily, maybe your mom is looking at every single thing that you create, right? But most people are not opening every single email, reading every social media post, consuming every single thing that you put out there. So not being afraid to repeat that message and share some of the same things over and over again helps people get to know you as the person who does whatever, right?
Yeah.
You really want to become known for something. And so you have to tell people that over and over again.
Well, and I remember, 20 plus years ago, they were saying it took 7+ impressions to get someone's attention. I have no clue what that number is now, but I'm sure
I think it's even more now because we have so much.
Gotta be. Yeah.
So much. Yeah.
And if anybody on the call knows what that is, Kathy Bernard, you might know what that number is. No.
Oh, somebody said 37. I started to say it. I think I've heard up to 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joanne.
Of that. Yeah.
I believe it. Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But
So don't be afraid to repeat yourself.
So any last minute questions before we pull everything to close here? Holly, thank you. It has been an amazing Q&A for me. I love going through all these questions and answers with you. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your knowledge today. I want to thank also our live audience for being here today. Be watching for our follow-up emails with the links to Holly and her information. We'll see you Thursday, December 12th for our next conversation with Rachel Wilkins. We'll be discussing the power of mentoring as a tool for marketing your book and growing your business. That's Thursday, December 12th at 11 a.m. Same Batcave, I guess. Thank you all so much for being here. The link will come out soon. Thank you, Holly, so much.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.